When you need a lawyer, how do you find the right one? Contact the Chicago Bar Association.
Whether you've been injured or need a will prepared, whether you're buying a home or starting a business, having the right lawyer is essential. The Chicago Bar Association have lawyers who practice in most areas of law and speak a variety of languages.
Don't leave it to chance. Get a referral to a screened, experienced lawyer. Visit chicagobar.org or call 312-554-2001. The Chicago Bar Association. Se habla español.
The Chicago Bar Association was created back in 1874 as just a general resource to help attorneys network with each other and be successful in their practices. The CBA chose to set up the insurance subsidiary because a lot of the members were asking questions about what types of insurance they should tap into. Who's the best resource for legal malpractice insurance, life insurance, health insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And rather than sending those elsewhere, we figured we'd be a better resource if we just kept it all in-house and they had a familiar face to work with on a regular basis. And we think that it's very important to get the word out and let our members know that we're around to help as a resource. On top of that, we can work with any law firm or any attorney in the United States. When a law firm comes to us for a second opinion on their legal malpractice insurance policy, we're usually able to find them a lower price for the same coverage or better coverage, or in some instances, actually both. We can find a lower price for better coverage, which is obviously the end goal. Insurance is something that not a lot of people know the ins and outs of it, and maybe a smaller firm or a solo attorney needs that consultant to really keep them in line or to provide information to take it off of their plate. They have enough going on dealing with clients, collecting bills, doing everything that makes them successful in their profession. What I'm here to do is to be a resource and really to just provide assistance in something that they are not inherently an expert in.
Welcome to You and the Law, a Chicago Bar Association production that focuses on matters of law that are of general public interest and matters of public policy that are also of general public interest. So we have a very different show today. You know, we've done a lot recently on some pretty heavy and quote unquote serious topics. And today's topic, as I said before, we were talking, it is serious, but it's also loose and fun. And we have great guests with us today. And I'm not going to go through and introduce everybody because we usually only have one or two guests, and we have more today, and they bring a lot of different things to the table. Not everybody's a lawyer. Most of us are, I think. I think we only have one non-lawyer here who's going to bring some policy and other stuff. Thanks. And so in a moment, I'm gonna turn it over to our guest, but we are talking about the intersection of art and law and perhaps social justice generally. So there's a lot there. There are a lot of different angles, from the technical application of how the attorneys here work with artists and serve artists to how, you know, we use art and aspects of culture in our practice to practice our sense of justice, to inform policy, and just sort of have maybe a higher consciousness and be aware of things as policymakers or people who are involved in either participating in or administering policy. Even as lawyers, as we work on our cases, we're without question working on matters of public policy, even on single cases. So I thank everyone for being here and for dedicating your time and energy for this public service. And Professor Pope, since I just met you and probably know the least about you, why don't we start with you? And also because you're a non-lawyer, not to pick on you as a non-lawyer, but you can distinguish yourself there and tell us just a little bit about your background that might be relevant to what we're talking about today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm LeVar Pope. I'm currently a clinical full professor at Loyola. I teach in in the Rupe College program, which is a 2-year program for students who might not otherwise have the benefit of kind of college, access to college, right? Um, my I'm driven by research. I'm driven by kind of practitioner experience into research. I've worked as a local DJ, as a local producer, which got me interested in kind of local music and local scenes, and that's what I research. I've written one book. I published one book on the topic, and I'm finishing a second book on the topic. And my focus is really on kind of local rap scenes and how they're developed, kind of the history of those scenes. I teach in the area of politics and political science, and I also teach American government and some other courses for Loyola. So I'm thrilled to be here. Happy to talk about this intersection of arts and law.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to see Mike Wilder joined us. We'll get to you in just a moment. Very happy to see you here. We've got everybody that we were hoping for, and we're going right around now for very brief introductions. I didn't do much by that way because I thought it'd be appropriate to have you each introduce yourself. And why don't we go to Marnie, if you can go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Marnie Willinson. I have a civil rights litigation practice, so social justice is very much at the core of my practice. I do primarily employment discrimination cases, class actions, or cases for multiple plaintiffs. They're primarily race discrimination, sex discrimination, disability cases, and I have brought multiple successful cases against the city of Chicago to get women and people with disabilities into the fire department. So I've done that for almost 30 years, and I am presently also transitioning my practice into a music law practice. My husband owns Rosa's Lounge, which is a blues club in Logan Square. I'm sitting right above it right now. My office is above the second floor. The best thing about that is when I have a midnight Friday deadline, the music starts, and so I don't feel sorry for myself because the music is playing downstairs. So I'll be transitioning into that practice and working with a lot of the blues artists on their contracts and royalties.
Yeah, I gotta say, in addition to, of course, your civil rights work, the connection to roses and the culture that's over there was frankly part of the impetus for the idea for the show. So I thank you for all that stuff. And why don't we go to Paul too? Because I've been kicking this idea around in my mind for a while since our good friend Paul went from being really a top-notch lawyer to an excellent full-time comedian. So
Mhm,
tell us
mhm.
about that.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I was a lawyer. I was a trial litigator for Section 1983 defense stuff. For years, I also did entertainment law for a while. I own a company called Shoeshine Boy Productions, where we used to manage and book live music in Chicago. In 2020, I transitioned over to being a full-time comedian, which is what I do now. But yeah, that's it.
Pretty incredible. And it's easy to say in a sentence, but watching that transition was incredible, and the work that
Yeah.
you put in to do
Mhm.
this. So, and we'll go at the end, we'll go to Jan because he's with Lawyers for the Creative Arts, so maybe he can tie all this up and
Oh,
reorient.
yeah, I'll tie it all together.
But we're gonna go to Michael Wilder here, who, like other folks here, is a bit of a Renaissance person. I don't know where to begin with him, but Mike, what are you up to, my friend?
Hey, I appreciate it. Sorry about my voice. I decided to do the DNC this weekend, and the DNC got to me with a really bad cold. So my voice is going to be a little bit hoarse. So sorry about that. So Michael Wilder, I'm a shareholder at Littler Mendelson, which is a global labor and employment law firm. We do defense, so we represent corporations. I've been with the firm for 18 years, my entire career. So I am what they call a Littler lifer, from summer associate to senior partner. I'm also chairman of the board of directors for the firm. And I've been in that capacity for the past year and a half. My primary role when it comes to litigation is complex trials and litigation involving single plaintiff discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and all that good stuff. So, Marty, when you were mentioning one,
Oh yeah.
same page. And I like to say during my spare time, I'm a three times published author. I've got a fourth book coming out next year as well. And I am a avid art collector. I have about 30 pieces of art that I've collected over the last decade.
Thank you very much, and that is incredible. I was kind of thinking like, what's the theme? Yes, we have this sort of theme, but in a very basic sense, in my mind, it was interesting people who bring a lot of, life to the law, sort of, right? So, and I appreciate that. It's pretty incredible what everyone's doing here. And then Jan, if you could finish this off and tell us about, take some time if you would, tell us just a little bit, because we got stuff to talk about, but tell us about LCA and yourself.
Sure. Thanks very much. I'm the executive director of Lawyers for the Creative Arts. Like many or some in this group, in this room, I was a private attorney and was a commercial litigator in various large firms throughout my 33-year career. On the board of arts organizations of various kinds through most of that career. And my predecessor, who had a similar career path, decided to retire in 2014. And I thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So I was on the board at the time and threw my hat in the ring. And for better or worse, they hired me. And Lawyers for the Creative Arts, we have been around for 52 years. We were started in the 70s, which was a period of explosive growth of legal service agencies of all kinds, handling crises that individuals who can't afford lawyers encounter all the time, civil rights issues, but spousal abuse and landlord-tenant bankruptcy, the whole range. There was a gap that was recognized around that time of an organization that would represent people in the arts, individuals and organizations in the arts, in the vast array of legal issues that they encounter. Most artists and arts and even arts organizations, until they become very well recognized, don't have the money to afford a lawyer. And that's really how Lawyers for the Creative Arts was born. We were the second such group in the country. There's now dozens of us around in the big cities. And we field applications for legal help, for pro bono legal help. I'm looking at the littler Mendelson person about maybe doing some pro bono work for us. I know Marnie has done that on our associate board. So we have several thousand lawyers that are at different areas of legal practice around Chicago and the state of Illinois, who look at our case list on a regular basis and say, "Hey, I'm interested in that case. Let me hear about that." And so these matters can involve claims issues, copyright infringement, or the other way, but also transactional. So we help individuals in highly specialized areas of the business of the arts. That's what we are really all about. We don't teach you how to play the guitar, but we will help you to develop a band document, an agreement with a band. So we're in the more in the transactional area than in the dispute area, I would say. And that's who we are, and we cover all kinds of issues. I mean, I thought you'd go around to the rest of the room and get back to specific issues, but that's basically who Lawyers for the Creative Arts is. We also have a huge range of programs, educational programs, workshops, clinics, covering all aspects of the business of the arts, nonprofits, and a huge range of topics. Because artists don't just need a one-shot, help me with this problem, and then I'll put it behind me. They need to have an understanding of copyright issues and other complex specialized areas of business of the arts. And that's what we provide them in those kinds of programs.
Thank you very much. And I will just say, we're not promoting or pumping, selling things here, but LCA is certainly the kind of thing we should be promoting and talking about, and it's providing a major service, right? So we're not here to sell anything, but absolutely LCA is wonderful, does great work for people who need it, enriches our community. And Jan, thanks very much. And we will get to
And we don't charge for it, so we wouldn't be selling it
Yeah.
anyway. We just
Well, right, of course. Yeah, of
provide the
course.
work free. So
Yeah, so it's a great organization. And I had the pleasure of actually performing there with Mary Lane when she received an award, which was really an incredible event for me, and a union of the music and kind of
absolutely,
very
absolutely,
kind of
remember it well.
Yeah, so thank you. So with that, and I don't mean to put too much pressure on Dr. Pope, but since it's kind of within his field of study a little bit, if he's up to it, if you could, you don't have to set the tone for all of us, but if you could tell us a little bit, just kind of just an idea about what attracted you to the idea, or what you see as sort of rich territory to talk about in terms of art and social justice. It doesn't have to be a big, huge thesis, but just sort of an idea that maybe we can latch onto to get the conversation rolling.
So yeah, it's not a thesis, but I guess it's based off of a thesis, right? That I think a lot of this stems from local geographies, and as a result of migrations. At least the music that I look at. I look at a derivative of blues, a derivative of jazz in hip hop music, and a lot of that seems to stem from migrations of blacks from the South to the north, and into southern cities as well. And upon that migration, in many of the cities, it seems like there were there was leadership already elected that didn't look like them, that didn't kind of allow them to kind of be part of those political machines. Not in all cases, but in some cases, especially in the north. And that the social movements became a way to get some responsiveness, to get people to respond to them, right? I'm looking particularly at the civil rights movement, kind of the racial justice movements and things like that. And then that's kind of where the music that I look at kind of picks up, kind of the hip hop music picks up, after kind of the targeting of those movements, the the attempt to dismantle those type of movements. And that's where kind of the music that I look at kind of emerges out of the late '70s, early '80s.
Mhm.
So for me, the connection is it's a generational kind of connection, but it's like it's dependent on kind of that initial migration and kind of their experiences in cities.
Mhm, for sure. And kind of adding to that a little bit, kind of, there's been a lot of talk that the DNC is going on right now, and there's plenty of talk about whether and to what degree it resembles 68. And then I'm not opening that debate. I'm just putting it out there that debate exists. Certainly there are some similarities, but one of the similarities, or one of the things that was going on during that period of time is we sometimes think about now, like the culture, the music, what was happening socially, and the representations, the aesthetic, the sound, those sorts of things. Um, and I think we tend to think of the '60s as a time of social change. A lot of the way we think about it, or even remember it, or sometimes it's jingles and melodies and sort of the aesthetic of the art at the time, or whatever the situation is. Are we seeing? Does anyone think we're seeing something like that now? It doesn't have to be reminiscent of '68, but I mean, are we seeing? Because clearly there's unrest. There's no question about that. Is that correlated with any? Do you see it correlated with any kind of production of art or cultural artifacts that stand out? And I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but I see a
So
lot of I see a lot of action, but I'm not necessarily seeing pop art that's matching it all the time.
Well,
That's
Michael, though, you mentioned Mary Lane.
yeah,
Mary Lane came in the Great Migration from Arkansas. She was singing the blues as a young girl to cotton pickers,
yeah.
and
Oh, I'm aware of that because I'm making music with her right now, and
I
that's
I know I know you are,
yeah,
but think of that. So there's two aspects of that that I just wanted to mention. One is just her commitment and her involvement in an aspect of music, the blues,
yeah,
that was very much embedded in her racial background. But she's also one of the pioneers for women in the blues,
true.
and
Yeah.
so she picks up on two of those and is a major character in the art scene in Chicago and has been for many many years.
Yeah, that's very true. I know we're kind of jumping around, but that's the nature of a program like this when I suggest a topic as I did, right? So we're jumping around a bit, but certainly the sort of intersectionality for her without spending too much time on her, but certainly there are sort of layers to her story that make it pretty noteworthy in my opinion. And I think the track are kind of salient with the larger sort of narratives that's even in place with the without getting into detail, those issues are embedded in the political discussion right now and people's identities and this, that, and the other thing. So those things are part of the consciousness in a variety of ways, and I think they factor in. Okay, Paul, let's hear from you a little bit
Yeah.
about. You're out there all the time talking to people and trying to see what they believe and what they think's funny, right? So,
Yeah, I think, I mean, from an artist standpoint, I know that a lot of us struggle with getting involved in social issues because, uh, you know, it does affect your
sure.
base. And,
Yeah,
I'm often asked to be a part of organizations, especially because of my legal background.
right.
And I always kind of like, I'm hesitant. Number one, because I look at things from a legal standpoint. I'm like, well, this is an issue that's kind of a gray area and I don't really agree with it, or so to say. Obviously some social issues are more predominant, um, and I think that right now, going back to what you said, Mike, about 68, I think people are trying to coordinate it. There is a lot of issues that are on the table. People are concerned about uh, you know Israel and 2025 and women's rights. and they are looking to
And
the arts.
Palestine too. People are concerned about Palestine also.
Yeah, Israel Palestine issue. Sorry, and so I think that a lot of people are looking to the artists. I know from watching the DNC, everyone's like, "Oh, is Beyonce coming tomorrow?"
Right,
Or is Taylor Swift going to
right.
get involved? And so there is that consistency. But from a legal standpoint, I think that I'm always in a position, at least from comedy, I think a lot of people are looking at comedians right now as, providing truth, to truth to power or whatever. And as a lawyer that's also in that world, it's kind of interesting to see, some of my friends who are not even haven't graduated college and they're looking at things with logical reasoning better than politicians and lawyers.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
there is that intersection, at least in the comedy world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say that certainly the social role of comedians has started to move more toward, you know, telling us what's really going on. And frankly, the more difficult to follow the news is, the more full of lack of, the sort of traditional journalistic fact check integrity, the more rhetoric there is, the more absurdity there is, and the more the arts and the comedians in particular tend to shine sometimes to point out what's really going on. Who wants to pick up? We can go anywhere. We don't have to stay there.
Well, I
Uh,
can segue off that. I mean, I
yeah.
like SNL is really quick to
Yes.
find people to anytime there's someone new in the news, they are really quick to find the comedian or actor. I guess it's a comedian that's going to play that role. So that tells you something
Mhm.
about what's out there. The other thing I was going to say is, I mean, music is so powerful and so emotional. And we were talking about the DNC. I think one of the highlights and one of the things that's all over TikTok and social media is that roll call, which was all, the state by state roll call was all music and dancing and got a huge amount of attention. And then relatedly, there are always these, not always, frequently controversies about politicians using songs without the artist's permission. And so then you get, cease and desist letters and all of that. And it just all speaks to how powerful music is.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm gonna sort of follow up on a little bit of that and go to Mike on this. Um, Mike, as someone who, because you do employment litigation,
Yep.
right? Which, and I don't do that, but I do litigation. I have a sense for the nature of the work that you do and sort of the skills, a general sense for the type of kind of skills it requires. But then I see you doing things that are totally different, that seem like they
Mhm.
come like from a totally different part of being.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us about, like, do you feel like you switch into a different mode? Do you think you get in a different spirit? Like what? Because you're not just doing it legally, you're actually moving into different creative forms. So tell us about that.
Yeah, and what I've done is kind of odd too in the publishing realm and the author realm is I'm not only going into a different kind of industry, but within the industry, I'm doing different genres, right? So my first book was more of a self-empowerment book for teenagers and young adults, right? Called The Playbook for a Dollar and a Dream. The second one, rom-com, romantic comedy. I was feeling romantic at the time. So I wrote a romantic comedy called Jackpot. And then I realized like I really like telling stories kind of from a biblical standpoint. And so I wrote the gospel according to now, because at that point in time, I'm like, this is really, really interesting to me. And now I'm writing something that is a post apocalyptic, massive book that covers the entire United States or all of North America, right? So what I've decided is I like using that other side of my brain, right? So when we're practicing law, some of the motions to dismiss, motions for summary judgment, some of the discovery motions. There's a lot of templates, right? We've already kind of seen it before, done it before. And once you become a partner and a senior partner, you're more of a kind of a glorified proofreader. So you're not giving that initial writing. And so I like using that left side of my brain and kind of doing that initial writing myself. And I just kind of disappear into it. And
Yeah.
if one person read it, I was happy. I didn't know, hundreds of, tens of thousands of people were going to buy the books. I had no clue, but I'm very
Yeah.
thankful for it.
Yeah. And I just want to latch on real quickly to something you said at the end. I think you said I don't know if you said you just disappear or what you said, but to
Yeah,
me, that means
disappear to it.
being in the zone. If time goes away and you're doing something that's just like where you're just kind of coming out without all the rules that we have in law and without all the anxiety and what ifs, or did I do something wrong? But just it's a very different sort of experience, probably.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I don't have to get on Westlaw to proof it. I just
Right.
use my creative
You don't have to
brain and
cite it.
the world.
Right, totally. Okay, so we have, and I'm only bringing this up because we have so many people here, but we have about 5 minutes and we have a lot of guests. So what I'm thinking is, and this is also an easy thing for me to do, is just go around real quick and just add one note that you think is relevant to art and the law or how it relates to social justice or your conception or relationship with it. And then we'll close out. And thank you for your time. And Marnie, why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, I have a quick pitch for Jan's organization. For all the litigators out there, there are uh, the case list for lawyers for the creative arts and does include a lot of conflict situations or litigation situations. They're not all business, so there's plenty for everybody to do. I think my final thought would be the extent to which that rhetoric is an art. I mean, I think a lot of people end up going to law school because they were high school debaters, or they're known to speak well, or they're extroverted people, and that really is true. That rhetoric is an art. You continue to develop it. You use it at trial. If you go to trial, it isn't exactly like we see on TV and the dramas, but the OJ trial was pretty dramatic, and things can be pretty dramatic. And don't tell the judges, but even a hearing in front of the judge is also sort of a performance.
Yeah.
So, I do see litigation as a type of performing art that I use all the time.
Yeah. Okay, Jan, what do you got?
Well, I agree with that. First of all, I appreciate the shout out. I think the arts is both in terms of the performance side of it and what it signifies and the themes that it touches on, but also in the way it just works. A few years ago, there were stories about sexual harassment in the performing arts in Chicago, which in the days of Weinstein. We don't find that surprising anymore, but at the time it was unusual to hear about it, and it led to major changes in the way that performing arts organizations work and the kinds of rules that they set out, trying always to not damage the creative product, but to make it a safer environment and a more welcoming environment for the people who perform in it. And it was done with the help of lawyers, but it was mostly done by people in the arts, in the theater world, actually. And so that was kind of a way that a social cause grew out of just the performance of art, and I think made a huge change.
Right. We're short on time. So does anyone have something they really want to say? No, we're closing. Okay, so it'd be tight anyway. Well, I want to thank you all, and I knew it was going to be tight with so many people here. And frankly, I think we should get together in some other settings. So I really appreciate it. There's a lot of energy. You're doing a lot of wonderful stuff, and thank you for everybody tuning in to this episode of You and the Law. Thank you.